now that we're all here. We are doing our topic on biotic homogenization for a Limnology class of 2011. And I'm Megan.
And I'm Carrie. Biotic homogenization and its effects on aquatic life. The study of biotic homogenization is a topic that's ever growing. However, as we continued our research, we found that there seems to be a large gap in the knowledge of the long-term effects.
Okay, one of the many definitions would be that biotic homogenization is defined as an increased similarity of biotas over time caused by the replacement of native species with non-indigenous species. Three types of biotic homogenization: genetic, taxonomical, and functional. All three are fairly similar. The genetic is genetic characteristics to assess similarities within a certain region. And taxonomical is the most common and can be calculated by using species presence or absence information to examine the level of similarity in an ecosystem of a certain area. And functional is calculated in a similar way, only they use species by site data, as well as trait by species data.
An example of an invasive non-native species is the Asian carp. Reaching lengths of 1 meter or more and weighing up to 50 kilograms, Asian carp consume about 40% of their body weight each day. Their voracious appetite and ability to frequently reproduce make these invasive species a potential threat to Great Lakes ecosystems and commercial recreational fisheries. We have a news clip from CBS News that we'd like to show you.
I'm telling you, America's funniest videos would kill for this footage.
There you go, Steve, there's one. It may go without saying, but this particular species of carp has grown just a little out of control. It's not even native. It got introduced by accident about a decade ago, and it's now threatening rivers and lakes from Louisiana all the way up to Minnesota.
Researchers say the problem is these fish are such big eaters and fast breeders, they force out all the indigenous species. The federal government has even built underwater electric barriers to try and stop the spread. Of course, that won't help here.
Some fishing trip.
Yeah. Want to explain Jacquard's?
I shall. Jacquard's coefficient is an index that is used to compare and collect data of similar species in the same habitat. Okay, there's a formula used, and it's percent similarity equals A divided by A plus B plus C times 100, and A being the number of species present in both biotas, B the number of species present in only the first, and C the number of species present only in the second. So 0% would be none in common whatsoever, and 100 would be identical composition. Leads us into the causes of homogenization, which would be 3 interacting processes. One is the introduction of non-native species, involving intentional introduction and unintentional introduction. So intentional would be things like stocking the lakes for sport fishing, that kind of thing. Deciding on an area that they were going to try the homogenizing of the 2 different species and physically transporting them there. Unintentional pathways would be the release of ballast water from ships, opening of waterways and canals, accidental release from aquariums, use of bait, and possible flooding situations, which would rise up, I guess, and combine the lakes and combine a couple of lakes and rivers. And
good. In the case study done in Yellowstone National Park, environmental disturbances are often viewed only in terms of their harmful impacts on the affected species. However, in any disturbance, some species will benefit and some will lose, as is the case in Yellowstone National Park, where lake trout were introduced with the hopes of keeping cutthroat trout alive. A study of this done by William Wengler and his team shows that the lake trout, being deep water feeders, have not only taken over the lake, but this introduction could also have an effect on the otters who fed on the shallow water feeding cutthroats. They suggest that the population of cutthroat trout in this area will decrease by 60 to 70% over the next century. Another study done in Brazil by Patrice, which started in the early 80s in 5 of 6 cascade reservoirs along the Tate River. Native species declined by over 50% and non-native species increased significantly to more than enough so that the non-native species was responsible for the homogenization of the entire system. Most recent data indicates that the system is at a new ecological state that is considerably lower in biodiversity than it was in the 80s.
Okay. Some relative examples. The first one would be zebra mussels in the Great Lakes. Clarity, productivity, and benthic substrates have been changed quite a bit since they have inhabited there. They have a large capacity to filter algae and detritus from the water. Therefore, energy is taken away from the pelagic zone and put down into the benthic zone, which will eventually result in less energy for those organisms, including larval fish, leaving top feeders out in the cold when it comes time to eat. The consequences for other benthic fauna are quite negative at this point. As the bottom of the lake becomes layered with its shells, it covers up the substrate and organisms that operate in that area of the lake, not being a good thing, obviously. Second, the creation of splake. This is very interesting. The combination of lake trout and brook trout, I guess this is a very good example of success of forcing the biotic homogenization, and a topic that didn't turn out to be negative. And
So some of the outcomes of biotic homogenization is considered by some as a worldwide disaster. And you have loss of uniqueness and growth of uniformity, which means kind of like becoming communist, I guess. The complete extirpation of a native species within an area.
okay,
On the positive side, possible sustainability of an otherwise destroyed ecosystem, as is with the splake.
yes, I actually have something to comment on that. According to 2 researchers, studies have shown an increase in biodiversity due to new species being added to certain environments. Their reason was that this theory is true because the introduction of new species has surpassed the extirpation of species that originally occupied the area on their own. Even the invasive species have become settled in this environment without any problems.
Really. On the other hand, McKinney argued that there just wasn't enough time given during the experiments for the extinction rate to show and complete its course.
Which could be a possibility. But there's another report here. It says, of 2 scientists, Guido and Brown, found out through drainages across North America that through 80% of the drainages, the amount of species that had been introduced exceeded the amount of species, once again, that had been extirpated, which proved to show that the species richness had improved thanks to the introduction of non-native species, once again. So it's not all negative.
Well, it's been argued that even if the majority of the minor introductions don't cause great harm, inevitably there'll be episodes of mass destruction take place when the wrong species is added to the wrong habitat. Or there are too many non-native introductions in a specific area, and immediate deterioration begins right away, and it's irreversible.
Alrighty. A little stat here to push on my side of the argument. 4.6% or 4.6 introductions, for each extirpation in and among the fish faunas of 48 areas in the United States. Once again, supports my theory of positive.
Well, maybe we should just agree that there's a lack of knowledge in this area of ecological study, forcing the issue that there needs to be more investigation done before any serious conclusions are determined.
That could be. Just to add, splake is a good example of positive biotic homogenization.
Always need the last word.
That's right. But anyway, yes, I do agree that that would probably be the best solution have a bit more information on the final outcomes.
So the more homogenization is practiced, the more narrow the gene pool becomes. With this being the case, the evasive species are likely to take over, eliminating the wide variety of species we have at the present time. Perhaps a logical solution would be to have a better handle on preserving and taking care of our land, therefore not having to substitute decreasing populations in dying environments with non-native species to accommodate for the native species' loss of life.
I agree. I guess that pretty much concludes our episode for today. Thank you very much for listening.
Have a good day.